Welcome to 8,000 Miles to TapTown. My name is Finbar and this is Stu Box, Mind Over Matter. You know, very few people can lay claim to developing a musical style and at the same time conceptualizing and building their own musical instrument to support that style. Well, Stu Box is one of those people. In the 80s, he started to try and design a guitar that supported his own unique two-handed playing style, where he started to stick two guitars together, a twin neck guitar designs. Now, over 50 prototypes later, he's developed his own unique guitar, the Box guitar and the Wizard series guitar, where two necks are conjoined onto one fingerboard. With a few dollars in his pocket, being in Melbourne, Australia, again, 8,000 miles from TapTown, California, he traveled to the US to showcase this instrument. And using mind over matter, he broke down all the barriers that were before him, his resilience. He trucked on through and he got his business today to being a guitar company which is shipping guitars all over the world to fans everywhere. I caught up with Stu on this episode. He's a good buddy of mine. We've known each other for a long, long time. And I'm really honored to have him on the show to talk about the birth of his instrument and his mind over matter technique and how he just had that resilience to get through there and to now get himself into this place where he is today. It's a story that everyone should know about. And if you don't know about it, it's worth checking out. So without further ado, Stu Box. Let's do this. Ready? Welcome, Stu, mate. It's so great to have you on Raiders. You know, we've been mates for such a long time. It's just such an honor to have you on the show and talk about your journey and your passion and the things you've done. It's just incredible.
It's so great to see you again, Finn. I've known you a long time, buddy.
Yeah, it's a good friendship, bud. So for the uninitiated, Stu, like, you know, how did you get on this journey of making your first? Well, let's go back. So I know Stu. I knew of Stu when I first met him. I saw this amazing instrument, and it was basically two guitars put into one. And I had no idea what it was. I came down for the Melbourne Guitar Show. I was doing clinics at the time, and I saw this instrument, and I was totally transfixed by it. And it had a thing on the top that said Box guitars. I had no idea what Box guitars were. And then I came to Melbourne, and I started building a retail outlet called Revolver. And then I found out about this magical guy, Stu Box. And since then, it was this journey where I got to meet him and we started chatting. But Stu, you know, how did you get on this journey, mate, of inventing your first instrument? How did that all come about?
Well, how far back do we go, Finn?
Well,
I think music's always been in me. So let me take you right back to, I live on the Snowy River, which is Furrier Gippsland. It's a small town of 2,000-3,000 people. And my father was a logger. So I remember at 3 years old, we moved to Orbost and we lived in this little farmhouse right on the river. And they had a piano in the house. So I'd just jump on the piano and make noise, you know. I didn't know what I was doing. And from there, my parents obviously saw I had some sort of music in me. So they gave me a guitar, a little steel string guitar for my 6th birthday, and I'm left-handed, and I think you're left-handed too, aren't you?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
So I remember I didn't know how to play this guitar, but I'd sit it on my lap and play it with a spoon just to get sound out of it. And then 2 months later, the biggest flood in the history of the Snowy River came down and completely flooded the house. My parents we all had to just leave. And the water came to the top of the windows of the house. a few days later, it took out the bridge, so my parents couldn't get back to the house, and everything was completely destroyed, except for my little guitar, which floated and came to rest on top of a wardrobe or cupboard. So I have a memory of my mother coming back on the boat and handing me this little guitar on the riverbank.
Wow.
And as chance have it, we had to move. We moved into the street full of musicians, all 10 years older than me. So there was a band of, they were one family, there was a band always rehearsing 2 doors down from me, and an amazing singer a few more doors down. So that's where I really started to get my inspiration to want to play all sorts of guitar, electric guitar. That's where it all started, Finn.
Right.
And
And then
you know,
where was this point where you went, I need to put 2 guitars together and make my own instrument? Where did that all come from?
I went through the whole thing of influences, all my influences from, you know, the Deep Purples, Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, Blackmore, Yes, Steve Howe. So I picked up all these influences. I went through the flamenco. I just wanted to absorb all this knowledge. And then I was in a band 10 years older. The guys were 10 years older than me. And it must have been around the time of Van Halen. But he showed me this trick of, you know, the little tapping that Van Halen started. And I just grasped that concept and went with it and just started expanding from there. And then I discovered Van Halen, like a year later or so. I actually heard him for the first time. And I thought, how does this guy do this? Of course, from there I discovered Hendrix and Frank Zappa. And we're talking, I'm 15 years old by this stage. Then a few years later, I came across a guy called Stanley Jordan, and not visually being able to see him, all I did was hear what he was doing. I thought, that's impossible. How does someone do that? So I quit my job, moved back home with my parents. I was 20 years old, and just spent 2-3 months with the album and the needle. You know, the old trick of lifting the and just trying to figure out how guitarists do these things. I spent 2 or 3 months and learnt quite a few songs off that album, and got my right hand technique, which is a mirror, you know, a mirror image. So it's not really that difficult to be able to do that. And once I'd grasped the technique, I was away. And logically from there, I was listening to some Frank Zappa, and when you listen to that sort of music, you sort of have different parts going. I'd tap my toes with different parts, and the other foot would be going with different parts of the music. And then it just came to me that this whole touch style concept for me would be so much better on 2 fretboards, on 2 guitars. So I had 2 Stratocasters, and I literally joined them together with a piece of wood between them and held them together with string. And that's pretty much how I started. And I then moved to Melbourne. I went on Red Faces like that. You remember that old show on Hey Hey It's Saturday? Yeah. And from there, I just started doing gigs around Melbourne with this whole concept.
Wow.
That was the start of it. But of course, you know, it was a journey from there to actually getting to the guitar I have now, which involved, you know, the natural process of, luckily I didn't cut up my old Strat, but every guitar I had, I'd cut them up and join them back together. And it started with twin necks. I made quite a few twin necks, and then I'd cut them up and join them together, so I'd have 2 fretboards next to each other with a big headstock, you know, and they were so heavy, top heavy with the headstock and heads. So it sort of became a natural thing to get rid of the headstock and do a Steinberger concept. And that's, yeah, I think my first headless prototype was 1989, 88 or 89.
Wow. Yeah, well,
And
it's interesting to me that we're in this country, Australia, and you've got this idea and you're working it out as you go, and you've just got a vision and you're working towards this thing, and it's out of necessity, right? It wasn't like you could go and buy anything like that, and you just sort
it,
of and then you're developing these skills, and not only are you developing the playing skills, you're developing the building skills, which I find really fascinating.
well, I had no idea how to build guitars or the first thing about them. So yeah, it's just pick it up as you go. And I remember peddling this concept once I had the headless in my hands, peddling the concept around Australia, and you know what it's like in this country. There's a bit of tall syndrome, poppy syndrome going on, and everyone rejected it. I took it to Maton, and they said, "Look, Tommy Emmanuel could never play this, so we're not interested."
Right.
So I'd borrowed all this money from a bank at that point, and I was down to my last few dollars. I had enough to buy a plane ticket, so I bought a plane ticket to Los Angeles, and I had $700 in my pocket, and that's what I did. I didn't know why I was going there, where I was going. I just had this blind faith. So I landed in LAX, and jumped in a taxi and said, "Take me to Hollywood," which cost me $20. And we drove past the Beverly Hills Hotel, and I said, that'd be a good place. Drop me off there." And he said, "I don't think that." So he dropped me in East LA somewhere along the strip, and the rooms were $140. So I stayed 2 nights there, and I'd already blown most of my $700. And the first person I rang was Frank Zappa. Now he didn't get back to me. Someone answered, which was great because they don't do that in Australia. But someone answered and said, "Oh, look, he's sick at the moment," which he was, unbeknownst to me.
Hmm.
Well, the next day I thought, what am I going to do? I walked across the road. I hired a car. I rang Guitar Player magazine because I'd been in Guitar Player several times by that stage, and I just drove out of LA to San Francisco. And the boys at Guitar Player mag took me out for lunch. We had a good chat. um, and then I got back in my car and I thought, what am I going to do? So I just proceeded to drive for the hills, drove over the mountains, came to the coast, and spent 3 days driving back to LA. By the time I got back, and this sort of peace came over me on the drive back, where I thought, well, everything's going to be good. Everything's going to work out. So I drove back, dropped the car off, and the dude that hired the car to me said, "Look, there's a hostel on Venice Beach. Go stay there. It'll cost you $5 a night, whatever." So I caught a bus down. I had 2 prototypes, guitar prototypes, headless, with me. I lodged into this hostel. I phoned a dude in New York who was interested in one of the guitars, and he said, "Look, I'll buy one of those guitars now. Send it off to me. I'll get the money to you." So that's how it started, Finn. Then I found a workshop within a block of that hostel that makes guitars, and I went around there and I said, "Yeah, sure, we can gear this guitar up and start making them for you."
Wow, amazing.
From there, I met, because I had my headless concept had 2 whammy bars on it like a Steinberger, so it was like 2 S trems welded together. I handmade these bridges out of brass, and they hooked me up with Trevor Wilkinson, who knew Ned Steinberger. So, I hooked up with Trev, and he said, "Yeah, I can modify these bridges. I can make them for you. Let's do a deal with Ned." So I chatted to Ned, and he sold me his S trems very cheaply. And Trevor Wilkinson would then modify them, and they'd fit to these new guitars that were being made out of the workshop in Los Angeles.
Wow, amazing.
That's how it started, and I started making enough money to pay the bills. I rented an office in the hostel, and ended up running the hostel, so I got free rent. LA is such an amazing place.
It is, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Things are cheaper than Australia, and it all happened from there, Finn.
Well, I think I looked like there's some beautiful artifacts in that story, and it's just like, having a vision and following it through, and then taking a gamble. I can only imagine at that time, like you're doing something that was so foreign to a lot of people, but you had this belief in it, so much so that you went and borrowed money on it and went around the world. And credit to you, bud.
Yeah,
And it's just like it's a I have an ultimate amount of respect for that. It's that inventor, that adventurer, and I guess that's why we've been such good friends for a while. It's that I totally embrace that, and especially in a country like Australia, the culture's not doesn't it's not really it doesn't really, especially back then, it didn't really support that sort of attitude. So I think there's a really great story for a lot of people watching this show in terms of whether you're an artist, whether you're an inventor, whether you're a musician, a painter. The world is changing so much right now as we go through COVID, and it's not, we've become used to a world where everything's just done. It's magic, and you get there. But that journey that you're talking about, it evolves in front of you, and you got to take it by the horns if you believe in it.
absolutely. And life's a gamble, you know that, and you're the same as me. You have an idea and you just follow it through, and you don't think about the hurdles or whatever. It just seems to work out naturally. It's some sort of beauty in that. It's some sort of power in the universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That, yeah. Whether you
I do,
call it,
and like I always, to be honest, as someone like yourself who's constantly trying to invent things and do things, there's so much energy involved in thinking about doing something versus just doing it, and
yeah,
watching it evolve in front of you, not knowing where you're going. It was a previous episode where I had Baz from Hunters and Collectors on, and it was called "Don't Put Expertise Before Adventure," or the other way around. But it was this concept of you don't have to be totally perfect at everything and know everything about something before you launch it. Part of the fun of the journey is the people you connect with and how that evolves from there, how it blossoms by other people's input. But you've got to believe in yourself, and there's a lot in that. There's a lot to unpack just in that by itself. But beside that, anyway, you've done some great music. You've got products. You're constantly evolving products. And so, where are you at now, Stu? I know you're doing Wizard Sticks. You've got new guitars coming out. You've got new products coming out.
well, yeah, well, in the music biz, and I've always done this because I'm a player, and all I ever wanted to do was just play the guitar. And I heard a sound in my head, and I just make the instruments to try and get that sound. But back then there was no market really, and I'd never heard of the Chapman stick until I actually got to Los Angeles and did a NAMM show. I think it was early '91, and that's when I first come across the Chapman stick. And full respect for Emmett, and he's a decade before I am. But these instruments are sort of, even though they use the same touch style concept, they're sort of different. What I was aiming for was just to get that guitar sound and be able to play it like a guitar, like my Stratocaster. Guitar's just meant to be utilised to its full potential, and there was no market back then, so I virtually had to get out there and peddle the concept. I went to the GIT and started showing my face around there and showing everyone how it worked, and that's where I hooked up with Jennifer Batten, and Roy Ashton was a tutor there, and he bought the very first production model of the guitar. And I just started, LA's that place where all my heroes lived, so I just met them all one by one and eventually started playing with them, So I've recorded a lot of albums since and played with a lot of so-called famous dudes, but they're all great players, and at the end of the day, that's all it is for me. But of course, being in the music biz as a player, it's difficult to make an income Sometimes there's not many. There's only a small percentage that actually make a good living out of it. We both know that. So, hence I developed all these different products related to the music biz just to survive. So now I've got a whole range of 30 odd different products related to instruments care, such as stomp boxes and guitar care, lemon oils, orange oils, and a whole range of guitar models.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's like I got into, as you know, I got into software and media and technology around video and audio. But again, there was an intrinsic linking to music. Music is my passion; it's your passion. But by following this journey on, well, what if statements, what if that happened, and what if this happened, and being curious, it's so easy to sit there and go, oh, I'm not making any money. There's no money in music, but it's evolving that passion and keeping things linked. There's so many opportunities out there if you just look beyond your periphery about, the label, how you label yourself as a musician or as an artist or as a painter or as a software developer. They're finding the connected dots that other people can't see. Like, if we look at it this way, you stuck two guitars together. That's where you were trying to create a sound that Stanley Jordan did, and you figured out a way to do it. And that turned into you developing a market, which means now that you played with your heroes, which means you developed guitars, which you sold them and you traveled around the world, and you sold them around the world and you built a company. Now, I would doubt that you had any vision that that's where it was going to end up, but you got to travel the world, you got to play with your heroes, you got to create music, and you got to invent things and create products. And that's all credit to you. But that's that journey of being able to see beyond the periphery and your label of yourself. And it's I'm only a musician. What else can I do? Well, testament to you, bud, and to a lot of other people that just sort of keep evolving and keep the adventure alive of trying to, not get in a negative headspace, but get into a can-do headspace.
Yeah, absolutely, Finn. And in today's climate, for example, it's so great. I'm so grateful that I can play the instrument, and you too, because it's great therapy. If there's so many people suffering at the moment with what's going on with this virus, I can just go and play my guitar, and yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I do. But yeah, look, I just think though that what I'm hoping is translating, at least what's translating to me out of, beside the fact that I've known you for so long, is that, you know, you even now, you're not just sitting back going, oh, well, was me. You're still going, what if I did this? And what if I built that? And how might I do this? And how might I do that? And I think that's something so commendable. It's always that positive nature of looking for new things to do. And I think, it's so easy to sit back and go, poor, it's the world's bad and I don't know what to do with myself. I think it's a very inspirational message in your story.
Absolutely. And it comes down to a state of mind. Being positive is simply a state of mind, Finn. And there's a
Yeah.
real power. You put it to anyone can put it to the test. Just do it. Do it, Stuart.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's also, you attract people around you. You're like, I know this from my own life is that by putting out a positive energy, people want to be around you. When you're doing stuff, people want to be around that. So you're like a moth to a flame. People come to you.
and you attract the people you need and the people that can help you. And yeah, usually you attract more intelligent people than yourself, and that's where you learn.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
Like I had your brain, but I do it my way in my own simple way. But yeah,
right.
when
That's
I've achieved as well, Finn, and how your brain works, I'm just in awe of
Well,
all I've
mate,
had.
we're all in awe of. I'm in awe of you, and I'm in awe of my friends that just continually make something from nothing. I think it's just incredible, and I think it's a really great message. Part of why I'm doing this show actually is to just put a spotlight on people like yourself, the people who are who are just on a journey and enjoying that journey of life, not getting to the destination straight away. It's the connection of the people, how they work together, and how relationships and friendships develop, and ideas, and how they evolve is so exciting, especially when that starts to happen. And it's not easy. There's a lot of ups and downs, and you've shared some of your ups and downs, and there's some pretty heavy downs. But it's a credit to you where you're at now.
go write a song. Like if I'm incredibly down, I'll write a song and you'll come out with a fantastic song, you know. And it's back then we had no internet. Everything was done by phone, which it still is, and by mail, snail mail. And to record would cost you thousands of dollars if you wanted to get a good recording.
Yeah.
Whereas now we've got it all at our fingertips, you know.
Yeah.
I've got a studio as you do, and I can just retreat to that, and if I come up with an idea, I just go and record it.
So, Stu,
Like,
if you were your 17-year-old self, and you know, I know a lot of young people are starting to tune in and watch the show. Like, what advice would you give to them now, if based on your life experience?
well, if you have a dream and a vision, just go with it. Just go for it. It's that simple. Don't think of, like we discussed before. Don't think of, you know, this could go wrong, or why can't I do this? You just go with it. Have some sort of faith, and everything seems to work out. You know, of course, you go through your ups and downs, but things are hard. But they're just a challenge to me. It's just like a puzzle. You figure it out as you go. And you come up with a plan, of course, but usually plans, you follow a plan, you come up with a sophisticated plan, but it doesn't always go to plan, but it goes to some sort of plan.
Yeah.
It follows direction. So I wouldn't stress too much about it. I'd just go with your passion. And at the end of the day, you've really got to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, well, it's time to sit back and rethink.
Yeah, no, I agree with it 100%. And so, your new instruments, Stu, you want to just give people a bit of an insight where they might be able to find out about your new guitars and your products?
Everything's at boxguitars.com. I've got a store site there, and people can just go there and look at all my products. I've got new guitars being developed. I'm building, well, the Wizard Sticks where I'm at the moment, and it's still the 12 stringer.
Yep.
But super comfortable shape, and yeah, it just feels great. And yeah, I've sold quite a few of them now.
Right.
Where I'm at is just hooking up with my friends in America these days and making music. Like I think 10 years ago I toured with the Tommy Bolan family, all the players that played with Tommy Bolan before he died, in a band called Energy. And yeah, just meeting up and playing with players like that and trying to get new
Fantastic.
recordings.
Have you got
That's
have you got any music that you're recording at the moment, or have you got anything that?
Well, I have. I've got a few things on file that I'm working on, and I'm working closely with a few dudes in Australia with my band Stone Nation. That you can check that out at stonenation.com.au. That involves a few Indigenous players and just music. And I've got a great friend in Austin that we're swapping music at the moment. And before COVID hit, I was booked to I was contracted to the States to do this super band for a year, which involved all these old legends from England and America. And then I was contracted to do a tour of Europe with a friend from Austin in a Circus Soleil type band that had and three singers and performers, like a circus show. So
Yeah, right.
We'll get back to all that, Finn.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, mate. Well, Stu, it's been awesome chatting to you, mate. Great stories, great lessons, great inspiration. It's great to call you as a buddy and a mate. And, I'm glad we could put little bit of a spotlight on what you're doing. And, I just urge everyone who's tuning into the episode to check out everything that Stu's doing. It's awesome.
And it's so great to catch up with you. And yeah, I'm in awe of yourself. You realise that, don't you? Because I love you.
I could quote some Spinal Tap right now, but I don't think I will.
We both know that the music biz is just Spinal Tap. It doesn't matter how.
It is, exactly.
Everyone, we know that.
We do. It's actually a documentary, Spinal Tap.
Laugh.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Well, mate, great catching up with you. Thanks so much for tuning in, and look forward to catching you up in real life once all this craziness is over.
Absolutely, Finn.
Take care, buddy. Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye.